Hello, 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 y'all. I'm fortunate enough to be here today with Miss Monica. Monica, I'm not going to steal your thunder. Who the heck are you and what are you doing here today?
Yeah, hey Ryan, thanks for having me on today. Who am I? I guess I am a former fierce female executive who enjoyed a highly powerful, highly compensated C suite position until about 2 years ago when I decided, and it was at a $20 billion organization. So there was a lot of responsibility that I had there. 2 years ago, I don't know, in some sort of combination of a menopausal, burnt out fit, I was like done and I resigned. And I am now hanging a shingle as a dynamic public speaker and consultant. That's who I am today.
Hmm. And how does a resignation of that scale work? Because you're obviously responsible for a lot of people. It can't just be, "Hey, boss, I'm done. Bye." There's,
Yeah.
you probably have to give a pretty significant notice prior. Is that right?
Yeah, I was giving notice. It turns out my notice was not welcome, and I was done the day I resigned. So I had planned on, a couple of months. It was an organization I'd worked with for many, many years. I was very close to the employees were my family. It was a member organization. The members were my family. I had kind of grown up within this organization. I started out as an 18-year-old intern. There was a CEO change, so there was a new guy in charge. And when I resigned, I think it was taken personally, and I was more or less done that day. So while I had planned on that transition that you're talking about, I didn't have the need to do that transition. Instead, I did this like I'm giving myself 6 months, turned out to be 9 months of decompression. I like in some sort of eat, pray, love moment said, I'm just going to chill. I'm going to play some golf. I'm going to hang out on a beach. I'm going to read books for pleasure because, those of us in C-suite positions, a lot of us in working environments that are super intense are always reading the who stole my cheese kind of books. And so I wanted to read and or the stuff that we needed for our positions. I wanted to just kind of find myself again. I don't know, how do you say that? And I got so bad at golf that I decided, all right, time to start after about 6 or 9 months of meeting people, connecting, hanging my shingle, letting people know that I'm out there. And I'll tell you, Ryan, in many ways, it was exactly what I needed to take that time to just decompress, get over that burnout and come back anew. And in many ways, it kind of created a hiccup for me when I started again. The moment I resigned, I had people calling me, offering me jobs, people saying, what are you going to do next? And had I said, this is what I'm doing, I'm going to consult and be a speaker, I think I would have had gigs lined up. I almost made it harder for myself by
Hmm.
taking that time. So, because we're giving advice is do what you need to do for yourself, but there are consequences to both, right? Had I started out in this burnt out place and space, I'm not sure that I would have had the clarity to know what I wanted to talk about and know how I wanted to market myself. But I know I would have had people kind of lining up to use my services. So just throwing that out there.
hmm And from the moment you made the decision to be speaker and consultant, what did the next, say, three decisions after that look like?
Yeah, well, letting people know, right? So in that kind of 6 to 9 month period, and I say 6 to 9 months because for 6 months I did nothing but golf, hang out on a beach, read, reconnect with friends and family. That 6 to 9 months was let me get really serious about okay, hanging that shingle, working with an agency on a website. You have to have video to get speaking gigs, but when the way that I left and I spoke in my former job. I was a communicator, a professional communicator, and I went from designing presentations to delivering presentations over the course of my decades long career. But I didn't have my hands on any of those videos. So I had to kind of get speaker reels. I had to design that website. What is my logo? How am I, create an LLC, let people know you're here. So I did that for a few months. So the three things were kind of getting the collateral and all of those things that you need to have as a business person done, letting people know I'm here, that adage that if you build it they will come, not true, right? Like you didn't just come find me because I put a website out there and decided to change my LinkedIn profile. So letting people know that I was there and then actively going after kind of the positions that I wanted or the speaking gigs that I wanted. And just because you go after them doesn't mean that they come to you then either. The other thing, I think you said 3, let me throw in 4, networking, like seeing what other people are doing. I spent a ton of time, probably too much time on LinkedIn, kind of looking at the websites and the videos of other speakers, like who is your competition, what are they talking on, how are they delivering, what is relevant today in terms of what people are hiring for. And then coffee, I mean, I have had more coffee in the past year and a half with people, strangers, than I have had in my entire career. And just picking the brains of people, how do they organize, what are they using, what are some Linktree, what is this tool, CRMs. I'm just kind of figuring out what everybody else is doing and then adopting what works for me in this new space that I'm in.
Hmm. And so for speaking, when we talk about a speaking business, um, a lot of aspiring speakers, and me included, think, oh, it's I go and the business is giving the best talk possible, but that's not the business. The business is getting the gigs.
Right.
Um, so at what point for you and your speaking business do you think it's right to build out a team for your speaking business? Because you as a speaker and your gigs, that is the product, but you have to get people to want to buy the product and actually get it. So when is right to build that team for your speaking business?
Yeah, you'll know when it's right because you'll be struggling to either stay on top of or you don't have the time or the resources to actually do what you need to do. I heard somebody, I'm listening to different LinkedIn lives and such. And I can't remember who this was to be able to give them credit, but somebody said, if you take your business casually, you'll be a casualty. And I hope that
Mm,
wasn't you, Ryan, because I should remember if it was you
mm,
saying that.
mm,
But that has kind of stuck in the back of my mind. And so there are days that I'm out on a golf course or that I'm not at my desk at 8 in the morning, kind of pounding away and looking for speaking gigs or following up with somebody that I had coffee with. And I'm thinking I should be doing that. What is preventing me from doing that? I don't want to go back to 80-hour weeks. So I'm kind of in this place now where I'm, say, a year into my speaking business and consultancy, where I'm feeling like I need to bring in some resources. In my case, I think I need to bring in resources for clarity around thought because there's so much I want
mm,
to say sometimes that I can't get to that quickly. But I want to be authentic. So when I'm delivering a presentation and I'm designing kind of the outline for that presentation, it's going to be me doing that work. But can I hire somebody to do the visuals for my PowerPoint? Can I hire somebody to kind of put together that Linktree backroom stuff? And I'm feeling like I either don't have the talent or time to get to that because I want to focus on kind of that authentic piece, the stuff that I'm delivering, the Monica brand. And so I just kind of know. So when is the time? The time is when you're starting to think about it and you're realizing I either don't have the time or the talent. And so let me hire that out. You need to invest in your speaking business, be it the professional speakers reel, the proposals that you're putting together, the backroom Linktree stuff that you're sending people to be able to really kind of be a paid speaker. A rule of thumb that I'm now represented by a speakers agency that they've shared with me is if you want to be a $25,000 speaker, you need to at least commit to $25,000 on your speaker reel and some of your other collateral. And so, you have to spend money to make money is kind of the rule here, but you'll just know if you're finding yourself kind of on this wheel, stuck or spinning, going down rabbit holes in LinkedIn, spending all of your time looking at what everybody else is doing and not putting together your stuff. It's time. It's time.
mm. You mentioned something interesting when you decided to make the decision of speaking to. I'm assuming when you said you had a lot of coffee, you're referring to a lot of conversations with people, learning from them, kind of their expertise.
Absolutely.
I've never heard that before. I've heard, masterminds, networking, but having coffees, virtual meetings like Zooms or whatever to discuss and learn from people. What did that look like for you? And what kind of tactical knowledge would you share from that experience for other entrepreneurs and speakers that they could use from what you did?
Yeah, sure. Not accusing anyone, but I feel like there are some smoke and mirrors out here. And so people who are hanging a shingle as a speaker, there's I heard a story of one guy, a woman talking about a guy that she knew as a speaker and was kind of a friend of hers. And she's like, every week he was posting something, like he was in another city. And she assumed that every week he had a speaking gig somewhere in the country and he was traveling to it. And she was like comparing herself to that, saying, gosh, we kind of started at the same time. I think we have the same skill set. I don't have a speaking gig every week. And then she kind of peeled back the layers and said, oh, he was like on vacation with his family and posting something, not in a way where he was outright saying he had a speaking gig there, but you assume that he did. And so as a speaker, you are supposed to put yourself out there, right? And you are supposed to show that you are somebody that a company or a meeting planner wants to hire. And so you present yourself in a way that has people saying, gosh, wow, they're killing it. And early on, I mean, I'm presenting myself in that way. It's what we're supposed to do. And then you'll see that I say, had a great time at the Iowa Bankers Association, and you see me on stage, that's me speaking. The post before that wasn't me speaking, but people are like, you are killing it. So we're all doing it a little bit. So I took a step back at some point. It was like smoke and mirrors. Like we all talk about imposter syndrome, right? I didn't have imposter syndrome. I had, what am I doing wrong where somebody else is getting all of this traction in terms of speaking events and gigs, and I'm not. And I wasn't doing anything wrong. I'm doing everything right. Maybe there is some smoke and mirrors. So sitting in these master classes, great. Attending these LinkedIn lives that people are doing, great. They're all beneficial. I'm finding, however, that the connections with people in the industry like me over a cup of coffee are more personal and truthful and honest. We talk about the struggles. We talk about the costs. We talk about, 9 out of 10 proposals or 90% of proposals are getting rejected. Okay, great. I'm not alone, right? And so we were just having kind of more honest, less kind of presenting and promoting ourselves conversations when we're, two of us sitting down, just talking over a cup of coffee. So I highly recommend that. I also look at, in my career, I would always talk about look for unlikely partners, right? Don't just look for the people doing what you're doing or having the same ideas that you have. And so the unlikely partners kind of inspire creativity for me. They give me thoughts that thoughts and ideas about things I really hadn't considered, but I can incorporate into my business and help my business, and or going into a different place in space. My career was in food and beverage, in agriculture. And so that's kind of what I knew. That's where I worked for 30 some odd years. But I did strategy, I did innovation, I did sustainability and ESG. I did a whole host of things that other industries are doing. I'm getting speaking gigs in the banking industry. Women in banking is something that I've had now multiple times and a lot of interest from. I hadn't considered the banking industry. Like, I'm a letters person, not a numbers person, but I have a story to tell that inspires them, and there's kind of opportunity in an industry that I hadn't considered. That came from a coffee conversation.
And when you say this, where are you reaching out to these people? How are you reaching out to them? Because I think it's is it LinkedIn, and is it, hey, I want to have a coffee? Thousands of people get those messages. I noticed you were XYZ. I do this. Would you want a conversation? So how did you kind of filter yourself out of the kind of mumbo jumbo to kind of say, hey, I just want to talk. I want to learn from you. I have nothing to sell you. I literally just want to learn and connect with you. How did you kind of do that from a tactical perspective?
Yeah, my LinkedIn inbox, my dream would be that it wouldn't be clogged with all the solicitations that it's clogged with. And I'm finding that I'm not really having many real conversations there. Everyone has something that they want to sell me. They're going to help me write my book. They're going to help me do my podcast. They're going to help me get. I'm like, if you're going to help me, like, have a conversation with me, don't sell me something. And so LinkedIn, no. I will tell you that it's word of mouth mostly. It's connections of people that I've met. I go to an event and I meet some people there, or I speak, and I will tell you, I'm boasting now, but one of the reasons I knew I wanted to become a professional speaker was whenever I presented, I would have either high scores and great comments on surveys and meeting evaluations, and usually I'd have a line of people waiting to talk to me as I got off the stage. And so I knew that that was something that, I was really good at. But from the speaking gigs that I get, from the coffee conversations, from these groups that I join, one of the first things that I did was I got a coach, and I belonged to a group here in Kansas City that was about helping women kind of find their footing. I'm getting recommendations from that. On the golf course, I mean, 2 years ago, I was on a golf course and we got paired with a couple who was on their honeymoon, and that woman is part of a meeting planning group and recommended me, and I got that gig. From that gig, somebody was there who saw me, and I got another gig. There are some resources that I subscribe to that give you links to calls for speakers. I've done that. Not a lot has come from that. It's largely from my connections that I'm getting speaking gigs, and or my speaking gigs that I'm getting more speaking gigs.
Interesting. And what what would you say is an expectation you had when you decided to get into professional speaking and consulting that turned out to be 100% false and the opposite of what the reality is that you've found?
Yeah. The expectation, Ryan, was, oh wow, Monica's speaking. She's great. We should hire her for this event X, Y, and Z. 110% wrong about that, right? So there are a lot of really great speakers out there. And while I have something to say and people think I'm great and I get really high marks on evaluations, in fact, a speaking gig that I just did where I was probably the third of three speakers, the other two were the kind of keynote speakers, I got comments that I was the best speaker of the day, and assessing kind of myself against these other two. I was like, yeah, I was the best speaker of the day. So I just thought, if you build it, they will come. And I said earlier in this podcast that that is not true. It is not true. And you're not right for everybody, right? So I have a style that's kind of a no nonsense. I'm funny. I'll say words. Some people might find me offensive, but that's authentically me. And so you are not for everyone. And just because you hang the shingle doesn't mean that people will want to hire you. And so it's a lot more work and time than you would expect. We're not all going to be Mel Robbins tomorrow, no matter how much money we spend, no matter how great our reels are, no matter how much we're out there podcasting and posting. It just doesn't happen as easily as it appears it should happen. The other thing that I would tell you is I talk about crawl, walk, run. I really kind of wanted to put my toe into this and build my brand and start slowly and kind of assess, because I was such a generalist in my job. There were so many things that I could speak to, and everyone's like, you need to lean into something. People need to know how to use you and what to hire you for. What is your shtick? What is your message? And I'm still not totally there, although the universe is telling me women's empowerment, female empowerment. That's largely where I get hired. I was, one of the boys, the only female in a C-suite at a male-dominated organization in a male-dominated industry, but I have been resisting that. But I think that I do need to get there. And I've just totally lost my train of thought because I haven't put my outline together for this. But I think that, I think it's okay not to be there. But there is a kind of there is a plan you're supposed to follow. This is where I was going. I'm supposed to have a podcast. I'm supposed to write a book, right? The book is your business card. We hand it out. Everybody answers this question. Here's my book. It's great. Read it. I know I need to do that. I haven't done it. I'm now exploring it. Do I do the podcast or do I do a book? What comes first? It's kind of the natural progression. I don't think you can be a speaker that is a popular, highly paid speaker, highly sought after and or coveted, if you're not doing what all the other highly sought after and coveted speakers are doing, right? And so, in this universe that we live in, Monica having a website and putting some things out on LinkedIn that get comments and are ha-has, not enough. And so, I know I need to get there. I would say I'm probably more in my infantile stages of my journey. I'm not crawling anymore. I'm walking. But if you want to run, these are all the things you have to do. It's the price of entry as a public speaker. Would you agree?
That's really interesting. You called it the price of entry as a public speaker. I think I've been calling it your credibility stack as a speaker. You have the book, you have the podcast, you have the socials, you have the speaker reel, you have the website, you're making podcast appearances, you're speaking on stages. I know a lot of people that I'll talk to that are speakers, they normally started with one and they just maxed out that one thing in their credibility stack. Maybe they had an Instagram account with over 100,000 real followers. And then from that, they use that to get a speaking gig or get podcast appearances. And then they turn those podcast appearances into more. And then they turn that one speaking gig into a speaker reel. And then they added that to the website. And then that led to more. So for you, how do you normally go about the decision of how you want to tackle that? You said right now that you're making the decision of between book versus podcast. What kind of things what factors are you looking at to make that decision?
Yeah. So again, authentically me. I want to be authentically me. I'm leaning into professionals. I mean, people who do this as their business. I've had multiple conversations now with a woman who helps speakers like myself to do the podcast. And this is my homework, she says. Figure out, what would you talk on? What would you be presenting on? How often do you want to do? There's a lot of questions that need to be answered before you can make the decision that this is right for me. I am a communicator by trade. Written communication is something that I excel at. So should it be podcast or should it be the book? If it's the book, is it going to be a meaningful book? Is it just going to be the calling card book? Personally, I struggle with it's just my business card. I want it to be a book that people will read and get something from. And so I have questions that I have to answer, and the answers to these questions for Monica will be different than the answers for the next speaker down the line. But I am relying on people who have been in this space. And every time I have a conversation, which is why I'm having so many conversations with so many different people, and while I lament that my LinkedIn messaging is filled with solicitations, there are people in there that have more expertise than I have in certain areas. And so what does it hurt to have a 20 or 30-minute conversation with somebody? I glean something from every one of them. And so that is, I think, where I am struggling a little bit, is where I want to go next. And is it authentically me? Does it not just prop up my brand, but does it actually bring value to somebody that is hiring Monica Massey, be it the book or the podcast? I mean, we are in a sea of a lot of really talented people doing a lot of really great stuff, right? It's almost like being a professional golfer. You can be a fabulous golfer, but not everybody makes it professional. In fact, hardly anybody makes it professionally. So to be the top tier of what we do is going to be very difficult. So figure out where you want to be. What is it that you are gleaning from this business? Is it you have a certain financial threshold you're trying to meet? Is it that you just enjoy kind of imparting wisdom on other people? I entered into this, Ryan, saying I'm not going to coach. I mean, I was a bad leader of people, especially early in my career. I saw myself as a boss and not a leader. I am now coaching people. Although I said I was not going to be a coach, it is not in my profile that I want to coach people. But from some of my speaking gigs, I've had a couple of people come to me and say, will you coach me? You have a lot of things a style that I resonate with, and a lot of things that I can learn from you. And so I am doing that. So you will know when it comes your way, if it's right.
And then for you, what are some thought leaders that you pay attention to? You mentioned Mel Robbins. Are there some others for you that you say, this person is amazing, I admire what they do, I pay attention to them? Who are those people for you?
Yeah, I mean, and I fear throwing out names because I'll leave somebody off, but there are people that are unknowns that I actually admire and try to emulate. People that are not out there hanging a shingle as a public speaker, but they are speaking or they have a leadership style that I resonate with. I tend to, and I've used this with the speaking agency that represents me, people with jazz hands, and they're just coming on stage and they're yelling and they're wearing sparkly clothing and they've got a funny hat, but they don't really have a message that matters or that is relevant to the audience. Like, those are not the people that I want to be. And when I talked about I was on stage with two other kind of higher profile speakers, that's what was happening. It was like a lot of jazz hands. I think that I got high scores or great feedback and people following me before I even left the stage, because I had a message that wasn't kind of muddled in all this fanfare. And so I tend to look toward people who really have a meaningful message, deliver it in a powerful way. It could be their voice, it could be their movement, it could be the visuals that they use. There are times that I go on stage and I don't have a PowerPoint. I don't want that between the audience and myself. And really, what I do to prepare and to make sure that I am the right speaker delivering the right message for the group is, what are you trying to accomplish? Who is in your audience? What is the theme of your conference? What do you hope that your audience leaves with? And then the other thing I want to know is who else is speaking and what are they speaking on? So I can figure out how I fit and how I can augment the entire program. And I think that I spend so much time doing that and not just delivering my same speech with my sparkly hat makes me kind of a relevant and worthwhile speaker, and one that does get high marks when I leave the stage.
You mentioned your message. What would you say your message is?
My message is about doing better and being better. And so that kind of, I was told early on, like, get your speech, get it down, and then just augment it a little bit for audiences. I don't do that. I have kind of this portfolio of stories, portfolio of uh, things I like to talk to and talk about. And it's a very interactive speech. And when we talk, Ryan, about what your event is and who's in your audience and what you would like me to speak to, I kind of pull from all of that to make sure that I'm relevant for your presentation. But the end of the day is kind of look in the mirror and do better. And I leave people with actionable items. And it's going to be different for everybody in the audience, right? Like, one person needs to show up better. One person needs to be a better listener. But I have presentations around empowering yourself, being a better employee, being a better employer, doing better, reaching further. It's all about kind of improving. And so be better, do better is really kind of the theme of a lot of my presentations. And then how we deliver that depends on the topic at hand and the event that I'm at.
And for the aspiring speakers out there that they really want to speak and they know they have a message in them, they're just not totally sure how to find it. How did you go about finding your message and getting it really concrete to be able to consistently deliver it on stage?
Yeah, pay attention. And so early in your presentation career, figure out what the audience is responding to. Like, pay attention to the audience and don't overthink that. If somebody is on their phone, it's not necessarily that you're boring them, and they might be taking a note on something you said, or they're looking you up, or it could be positive and in support of what you're doing. But pay attention to what resonates. Read the evaluations, ask for feedback, talk to the meeting planner, not just before and as you've gotten the gig, but after. What did she hear or he hear about your presentation? Where are people laughing? If you deliver a joke and it's fallen flat, don't deliver that joke again. Get professional resources. I think I shared with you that I hired a coach, and it was one of the very first things that I did. I spent 30 years taking to stage, but I recognize that, when you're following a bunch of droning on men who are talking about mastitis and cows, and you're delivering something that's fun and fresh and relevant for everybody, yeah, you're going to be a hit, right? Doesn't mean that you are the top of your game. And so I think paying attention, getting honest feedback. There were times that she would come to my condo and she would sit and I would be pretend delivering a presentation and she would be like, boo, Monica. I'm like, ouch, boo. Like, I'm really good at what I do. I was getting audible boos from her. I tend to talk with my hands and I walk and talk. And she's like, talk, standing still, walk, talk again. And there's kind of this script of how you're supposed to be on stage. I'm still not there. I still walk and talk, but a whole lot less than when I was in the beginning and people trying to keep up with me. And so get feedback, pay attention. The universe will tell you where you're supposed to be and what you're supposed to be doing and or what you're not supposed to be doing. Listen to it.
You mentioned authenticity. Where is the balance between doing what works as a speaker and being authentically yourself? Like you were saying, you naturally, move your hands a lot, walk and talk. That's authentic, but it might not be the right thing as a speaker. You kind of get the kind of pendulum and how you make those decisions between what is the right thing to do, whatever that means, and what's authentic to yourself.
Yeah,
Right.
sure. Yeah, no, I get it. I think, authentic Monica is walking and talking quickly and all of that good stuff. professional speaking Monica is still authentic in that I walk and talk and use my hands. But if you want an audience to follow you, you have to make sure that they can follow you, right? So blah, 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 blah doesn't is really hard for people, especially when you're in an audience of, I mean, I worked with my dairy farmer board were all older guys, right? And they had a really hard time with all that energy. Maybe my daughter doesn't. She's 25 years old and she used to things coming at her a mile a minute. It's the world that she lives in. So I am not less authentic. I am not less true to myself by practicing my skill. If you want to be, I've talked about golf a couple of times. I'm really bad at it, but I've gotten better at it because I've taken lessons. And so, I'm never going to be a pro, but I'm taking lessons because I want to be better. I want to be better at speaking. I want to make sure people can follow me. I want to make sure that I am being the best that I can be. Not being authentic would me being jazz hands and smiling and saying things I didn't believe in and just really kind of playing into and acting as opposed to being authentically me. I have years as an executive at a $20 billion organization. I am a former female executive. I have experience, I have wisdom, I have a toolkit, I have the scars from being in the C-suite. I have lessons that I can impart on people, right? There are a lot of people out there giving business advice who have never really worked in the business world. So to me, that is not authentic. For me to go out there and give advice on something I have no experience with is not authentic. For me to slow down, to maybe use my Italian speaking hands less, to stop walking as I'm talking doesn't make me not authentic. It makes me better practiced and easier to relate to as an audience member.
Now, two more questions for you here. Number one, if someone is listening here and they're an aspiring speaker or anybody that's finding value in what you're saying and they're thinking, wow, Monica, I would love to have a little, have you in my life somehow. Where can they find a little mini version of Monica on the internet?
Yeah. Go to my website, right? MonicaInc.com, or reach out to me via LinkedIn, message me. Don't sell me anything. Just ask me for coffee and let's do it, right? Like virtual glass of wine, virtual coffee. If you're in my backyard, I split time between California and Kansas City, Southern California and Kansas City. Let's do it in person. Glad to do it. It's kind of a pay it forward. People have done it for me. I'm glad to do it for someone else. The one thing I would say is just because you want to be a speaker doesn't mean you should be a speaker. Like not everybody should be a speaker. And there are people out there that are either not putting the time and energy into their speaking business. They are treating it casually. So there'll be a casualty or they're just not good at that. So maybe there's a different role for them in a different place and space in this world out here that we are in terms of taking to a stage. Glad to have those conversations too, right? So I think sometimes people are told you should do this. So they go out and do it, but their heart is not really in it or they're just not sure. Let's have those conversations. But yeah, glad to connect with anybody, Ryan.
Awesome. And what is one knowledge nugget from your years of experience that you would give to the aspiring speaker, the professional speaker, or the entrepreneur that speaks to grow their business?
Yeah, substance. Have substance, not just flash, right? So I think that the aspiring speaker needs to really think about the message. Does it resonate? I used to joke, having kind of come up through communications, that just because you can write and just because you can talk doesn't mean you can communicate. And so I think speaking is about communicating. It's about delivering the message right. It's about having the message be the right message. And so I think substance is that one piece that I would really caution everybody that if they're not there, forget all the other stuff.
Awesome. Well, guys, if you're listening here and you found this valuable and you have a friend, one friend that you think should listen to what Monica has been saying here and sharing with us here, send it to them. You never know, might make that one little 1-inch difference in their life that 10 years from now could be thousands of miles apart, right? So guys, thank you for listening. And Monica, thank you for taking the time to do this.
Thanks, Ryan. Take care.
Cheers, y'all.